Well, thank you for inviting me. I like to say everywhere I go, I learn something, and just now I learned from Sean McGarvey that I don't think I need to be spending any of my marketing money on Donald Trump. Doesn't look like that would pay off or pay. It's interesting, since last September, I've traveled around the country, and over the years in my term as a member of the board and on the executive committee, I've had a chance to listen to contractors in different parts of the country. And today, I'm going to try and share some of what I hear. Understand, if you will, that not every contractor shares the same view. So if some of you think these are disparate remarks, I accept that. I understand that. Joe mentioned I'm an engineer. My first exposure to the building trades came when I graduated from college, and I went to work for Backman Sheet Metal Works, a signatory contractor in West Des Moines, Iowa. I spent several years there, and I have for the past 40 years now spent much of my life doing what you do, working very hard to put people to work, to find jobs, to grow, and I think that in that we are aligned. The most important mission, and it's not a political mission, is how we grow our market share, how we grow our man hours. And in good times, it's, I think, easy to become complacent about finding enough for the people we have. I don't think that's good enough. Our competition is also growing in a better economy. I think the challenge for us is to outdistance them. It is time to plant a stake and grow at an accelerated pace. I noticed that Sean McGarvey was cautious in his comment about increasing market share. I'm encouraging you not to become complacent. I realize that that's not a journey you can take alone. You have to challenge your contractors to do every bit the same, to reach out, to do new things, try new markets, new business opportunities. As I thought about what I might say today, there are two or three things that occur to me. I want to talk a little bit about fences. I want to talk about surprises. I want to talk about relationships. And again, I'm addressing a crowd that's different from the contracting group I normally address. I'm not really going to talk about the agenda at SMACNA. Last night I came down the escalator. I get a big shout out, Andy Bredesen, business agent, Local 45, Guy. So I walked over, shook his hand, asked for his advice. Andy, is there anything you'd like to hear me talk about tomorrow? And Andy said, well, you could tell an off-color joke. And you probably ought to talk about relationships. Well, I said I'm going to talk about surprises. Andy, I don't want you to be surprised. I've been told that if you're a funny guy, you can tell a joke. I've never had anybody introduce me as a funny guy. So I'll be 1 out of 2 today. It's impressive what we can do when we work together. And I don't think there's anything that tells that tale more strongly than what we've done in terms of pension reform, where labor and management have been joined at the hip with the same agenda to fulfill a promise that was made to people who entered this industry, have worked a lifetime with an expectation that upon retirement they would have a secure future. And that is not a promise we can fail to deliver on. And I'm proud to say that SMACNA has taken an aggressive role, a very aggressive role on the Hill, in pursuing victory on that mission. And I thank you, Joe, and your team for the powerful support and for the leadership that's been demonstrated by building trades in the pursuit of that agenda. I think most recently, our joint LMCCs have funded a research project, an interesting project involving an independent researcher who's moderating discussions between local labor and management in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and the Houston Gulf Coast markets. Our hope is that we can learn some things from markets that are either burgeoning or shrinking or have been all but lost. What is it we hope to learn? Well, we want to replicate best practices. We want to identify what can be done, whether it's to recover, to maintain, or to grow. all aligned around that simple mission of growth in market share and an increase in man hours. So it is powerful what we can do together. I said I'd talk about fences. I grew up in Iowa. As a child, if you drove around the countryside, you saw a lot of fences. Fences necessarily to contain livestock, but also fences around corn and bean fields, as if the corn or beans would escape or people would get out of their cars and run amok in the fields. Today, if you drive around the countryside in Iowa, you see less and less fences, less boundary lines. Fences are there to define territory, to limit movement and activity. I'm not a big fan of fences, and I realize in some areas of the country, in some of our markets, fences have been artfully constructed. I understand that. In many parts of our country, in 70 or 80% of the contracting communities in the country, fences are a barrier to growth. I encourage people in our markets, and Andy and Craig know where I stand on this, that anytime we sit down to talk, we should talk about whether we're building a fence or taking one down. At the end of the day, if we can't figure it out between us, we'd ask what our customer thinks. Because ultimately, the customer will decide whether they like fences or not. I'm not discouraging fence building. I recognize in some markets they've been a powerful impact on our ability to retain our markets, in some cases to grow our markets. In some cases, they've inspired the growth of markets. I'm sharing my thoughts and the voice of some of the contractors in the country, and I'm sure many of you are challenged with the same thoughts. Labor management relations, we can do a lot together if we avoid surprises. I think surprises are great when they come at Christmas or at birthdays. But even then, I'm not sure if they're always great. I'm not a big sweater guy. It's really difficult for me to wear a coat and tie. So if I get a really beautiful sweater at Christmas, I can tell you right now, it's not going to get worn. I'm sure it was thoughtful, but it's not a great surprise. We solved that problem in our family by asking our children and our relatives and friends and each other, what is it you want for Christmas? Then we're only surprised that someone actually executed that wish. It's no longer a surprise. Surprises in labor relationships are not a good thing. I have been guilty of surprising my counterparts in labor, generally with what I thought was a brilliant idea, my own idea. Example, I thought perhaps it'd be a great idea to publish work rules on a project, somewhat because the customer had unique rules. I also thought it would be a good idea to ensure that we did a good job of communicating those by distributing those work rules and asking for employees on that job site to sign them. Well, here's how that works. The first day a member shows up on a job with something he's never seen before, he calls a business agent and he says, what's going on here? That leads us to a business agent calling me to say, what's going on here? And usually I don't know. I have to confess I don't always know what's going on. And I say, well, I don't know, but I'll check it out. Both of us have done a lot more work on this than we should have. And frankly, if I just extended him the common courtesy of saying, here's what I'm thinking about, got an idea, want to know what you think about it, I can assure you that 9 times out of 10, he's going to say, I'm okay with just about everything on here but this one thing. And he and I will come to terms with that, and when that member calls, he is prepared to address their question. It's a fairly simple formula. The lack of surprise in a relationship is a powerful thing. But to have a lack of surprise involves building trust. We can't get there on a single day. It's a long journey. And in order to build trust with each other, we have to talk. More often than sometimes we care to, sometimes about things that aren't really important, and not when we have problems. In general, our best relationships are built when we don't have problems, when we have good things to talk about, and we can begin to understand each other as individuals. So I encourage each and every one of you to take that step. You will have to drive that in some cases. Your contractor may not. Reach out, begin that process of eliminating surprises in a relationship. There are a couple of agendas, national agendas, that contractors in the United States ask me about, they're paying attention to. One is the Regional Gulf States Council. And I've had some contractors ask me, is this a template for things going forward? Is this likely to happen in my area? I can tell you, I can interpret from the tone of the question that it isn't something they're hoping for. And I have to ask them, well, so why would you be concerned about that? Well, let me suggest that if a regional council is effective, if it more effectively deploys resources, if it results in an increase in market share or growth in man hours that outdistances our non-union competition, would that be such a bad thing? Most of them would say no. But I will tell you that there is an interest, and so we are watching. And I am hopeful that it's successful. As a contractor, as a leader of a company that has a powerful growth agenda, I can tell you that I can't do it in a vacuum. No contractor can grow in a vacuum. I cannot grow in a shrinking market. The saying, all ships in a rising tide, applies here. I need everyone to grow. I need all union contractors to grow. If I hope to increase my market share, first I must increase my market share of union work. And then I must concentrate on how I'll get work from my non-union competition. All ships in a rising tide. I think each of us has a lot to gain from an improved relationship. The other item that I think contractors are paying close attention to at a national level is wage equalization. You know, I think it's interesting. I ask at every meeting we have, and every time I entertain a question about it, first of all, do you have wage equalization? I know the answer to this, all right? Every collective bargaining agreement has wage equalization. It is a fact. And all we're trying to do here is arrive at a template, a mutually satisfactory template. Naturally, contractors have differences of opinion about how that template looks and what it functions like. And I'm encouraged that later this month, SMACNA's Labor Management Committee and representatives of SMART will meet to continue to work together to make sure that what we do is something we can all function well with as part of building a relationship. My last thought, my last encouragement to you is you're here at a National Business Agents Conference, and I think sometimes, and I'm guilty of it too, of depending on SMACNA to drive an agenda. Perhaps you occasionally are dependent on SMART to drive an agenda. I will tell you that you own the agenda. The success that you enjoy in any market, in your market, is your agenda. You can receive guidance, support, coaching, resources, and all sorts of other tools from SMART, and in my case, from SMACNA. But at the end of the day, you own the agenda. The success in your market is dependent heavily on you. How well you recruit, how well you organize, how well you retain, and the power of the relationship you build with the contractors that put people to work. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning and share thoughts with you. Thank you.